take the smart way, right? Like we all want to do things the smart way. We don't want to overwork for things, but combine that with hard work, right? Like if we can instill hard work with our kids and teach them the smart way to do things, the power of that combination is unstoppable. And, I feel like as a parent, I keep instilling in my kids, yes, you do need to work hard, but let's be conscious of where you're heading in your life. Learn the traits of working hard, but also learn the ways to do things the smart way, creating value for people, and then match those together. And, you'll be the 1 in 1,000, and you'll have this future that will be extremely bright. And I think that's for anybody.
Welcome to the Unreasonable Life podcast. This is where we get to redefine what's possible and inspire you to create a life that is extraordinary. I'm Dr. Nona Javid, an entrepreneur, an author, a quantum leap teacher, and founder of Elevate Club and 1 Week a Month Mastermind, a professional life liver, and your guide to living boldly. Every episode, I'll sit down with an incredible guest who has shattered limits, pursued their biggest dreams, and created lives that others have called impossible. Together, we're going to uncover the stories, the strategies, the lessons that will empower you to live your version of that unreasonable dream life. Because the life that you want isn't unreachable. It just happens to be unreasonable. Let's dive in. Hey, Robert.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
You know what? I woke up this morning. The sun was briefly out. It's a day of opportunity. Life is good. Life is good.
I love that pattern break because usually, what do we normally get? How are you? I'm good. How are you? And it's like such an unconscious conversation.
It definitely is, right? And I feel
Yeah.
like, every morning it's the same thing with people. So try to add maybe something that's a little bit unique and thoughtful with it.
I love that. Yes, I love that. Amazing. So here's the thing. I want to kind of hear your story. I know I've been on your podcast and I follow you on Instagram, and you have all this wisdom that you share, all these incredible things that you've done from a business perspective, and I'm sure personally too. But I'd love to get your story. Like, how did you get started? You've done some really unreasonable things, I think, especially in the business world, that I'm so excited to learn from. So where did it all begin for you?
You want me to start from the top? That's good.
Start from the top.
You know what? Honestly, it started back really for me in high school. And I really resonate with this right now because my kids are in high school and my son is in grade 11 and sort of looking at the opportunities of what life can hold beyond school. And I remember being in high school and I got voted the most likely to be, a successful teacher, or I got the teacher's award or something like that, which I indirectly teach now. So it's sort of come full circle. But when I started at university, I actually didn't get into teachers college. I maybe didn't take high school as seriously as I should have. But I really wanted to pursue business. So I wanted to actually teach business in high school. It was my ultimate goal. And so I got to business school, which was for me, a huge life-changing moment. I went to Trent University in Peterborough. And for me, it opened up my eyes to maybe what was possible and things that weren't talked about in high school, or that my parents didn't really talk about because they didn't know it, but was the idea of entrepreneurship. And I got really excited about, the different possibilities. And I'll never forget my first year professor. His name's Ray Dart at Trent, and he was teaching either a small business or a small business management course. And he talked about reframing and, always making sure that you're thinking of concepts and approaches from different angles to always make sure you're including all the appropriate perspectives. And it really started to change what I wanted to do. And in the first year, I was really good at accounting. I was good at accounting in high school. as well. And it was just like my safety course. And people started paying me to help teach them how to do accounting in university. And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. I really believe that I have a future in entrepreneurship. I don't know what that looks like. I also feel like, I'm graduating university with 1,000 other people that are all coming out with the same designation. How do I differentiate myself a little bit? And accounting is this old, boring, white guy centric industry. Like, how could we change that up a little bit and make it a little bit more exciting? So, I actually finished university. I got my MBA at U of T. I pursued my CPA designation. I was working at a large national firm, and I remember looking at the partners, and they were, having some pretty serious conversations with me. They were moving me into management, and they said, you're going to be the next partner here. Your ability to do business development and communicate with people is extremely effective. And I was looking at the partners going, isn't business about choosing the people you want to work with? And when I was looking at the partners, I was like, we're not aligned in values. I'm not aligned with what it is, the work that you're wanting me to take on as part of this. And as we're going through and they're bringing me through this promotion process, I quit sort of abruptly. Now, the interesting part, just on a side note for me on my family side, my wife and I had just got married. We bought our first house. We were expecting our first baby. I bought my very first car. So we had all of these obligations that were stacking up. And this is when I quit. So when you're talking about unreasonable, that was probably an unreasonable move to make at that time. And when I did that, that was 2008. I decided that I was going to open my own business, and I was going to open my own business, making sure that it was always full of the people that I wanted it to be with,
Yeah.
that I got to choose who those people were, that I got to choose our focus. And for me, my focus and my passion was always around helping business owners, because business owners, in my opinion, are maybe the most, and entrepreneurship specifically, one of the most influential groups in making positive change in the world. So if I can help support those people making positive change so that they can make more positive change, I can have a huge impact on the world.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where we got started. I started with one employee in 2008.
Wait,
Right now,
I
we're
have
just
Robert, sorry to interrupt you. I have a question
yeah,
about this.
yeah,
This part of this making this very unreasonable decision. You just got
yes,
married, you had the house. Um, because this is a great opportunity. People can just look at this and be like, oh, the right thing would have been the right thing, the inside the box idea would have been, the matrix would have told you, the consciousness of the world would tell you to take the steps and take this job, and then maybe push this dream or this vision of whatever this next level was onto the side. Now, I'm curious as a couple of different things. Did you already in those moments as you were getting your promotion, did you already have a game plan or a vision for what you were to do outside of that? Or was it a no, I'll figure it out when I exit?
yeah. It was almost all coming together at the same time.
Mhm.
So, when these conversations started, so they were over not a long period, but over a few week period. And as soon as the conversation started, I was excited.
Mhm.
And then I started reflecting, and then I actually went the opposite way where I don't want to say depressed, because that's not really a state that I ever find myself getting to, fortunately.
Mhm.
But my mood was changing.
Yeah.
My energy was shifting. Like, it was almost like I had this pit in my stomach of making a choice to go forward in a direction I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so very quickly, I started having discussions in the community and found an opportunity to get started essentially on my own with a little base of clients that I could support right out of the gate. So
Uh-huh.
everything really lined up for me. But you're right. The easy angle would have been, hey, this salary is paying all my bills. Life is comfortable. Continue to follow that path. But truthfully, I don't feel like I've ever been somebody who's followed the right path from day one. It's creating my own path.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you picked, and I think this is where even if someone's like, okay, I tend to be more on the taking of the more comfortable or more familiar, I think this is where a quantum leap or an unreasonable life begins. Because if you'd taken that job or that promotion, your future would have been completely predictable. And while you took a risk, you actually had no idea, probably. I mean, you had an idea, you trusted yourself enough to step into the unknown, but the future could have been anything. You could have failed and have to pick something else up, but obviously you trust yourself enough to continue on that route. Okay. Just wanted to know what the thought process was.
Yeah. Well, and even on that, I think the major decision, and this was a conversation with my wife and I too, because I'm not just making this decision for myself, which is way easier.
Yeah.
But you start incorporating other people. My wife is way more risk averse than I am. I
Mhm.
would say she's heavily risk averse.
Mhm.
And I am more so convinced her that I believed in myself enough that I knew this would work.
Yeah.
Which was a process, right? And
Of
again, it
course.
happened fairly quickly. But for me, I had banked enough sort of overtime as well that I had a couple months worth of time
Safety.
and safety net that was there,
Yeah.
which was great.
Mhm.
But yeah, so starting in 2008, we started with sort of one employee. We started growing the business. A lot of, shaking hands back in 2008 versus any sort of social media
Yeah.
or having online podcasts or anything like that. So spent a lot of time at events, starting to grow the family. And we got to, I'll fast forward all the way through to 2020 COVID. We had hired our 18th employee at the start of COVID, which was our first HR person. I thought we had got to the stage of having HR, and her first day was the day that the lockdown happened, so she couldn't actually come in her first day,
Yeah.
and which was interesting. And she's been an incredible team member. She's now our director of people and culture. And since then, we've gone from 18 to over 200 people, mostly because, if you think of getting uncomfortable, I know all of us were uncomfortable during COVID. And for me, I had 18 employees that I felt responsible for to make sure that they were taken care of. But I also had 1,000 clients
Yeah.
that, their doors were closing. So what we did is we actually started a Facebook group, and this would probably be a huge part of our leap, but we just started offering free advice and guidance in this group, and I was going live every day. Everyone was worried about money, so we talked a lot about cash flow, how to manage cash flow, how to get access to resources, how to position their business, how to support their teams. So we really went hard at that, and it really boosted a lot of growth for us. And well, as you can tell, we've gone through a little bit of a transformation, getting up to over 200 people. But I would say maybe the tail end of that story is we've been recognized as one of the fastest growing companies in Canada
Mm.
over the last 5 years, and we just last week got recognized as the 32nd best place to work in Canada
Wow.
as well, because we've so much focused, like my original vision of working with people that we want to, that are aligned on very similar values, and we're all aligned on our mission. So, a few things that I'm really proud of along that journey too.
Those are incredible things. To see, this is why we have you on the podcast. Those are really, really admirable things. And so I'm curious, how do you go? Like, what's the mindset of having 18 employees to 100 to over 200 employees? Like, what is that like? Because I would assume your role and your identity in each of those, like, that's your evolution too, just as much as it is of the company. But I think more importantly, the way I see it is you kind of have to, not you, but in general, to have that level of growth. I mean, I just had somebody on my podcast who grew a business from first brick and mortar to 24 locations and then franchise, and then of course took on investors over 800 locations. So
Wow. Yeah.
having the conversation around what happens internally in those moments, I think it's really important for people that might be listening, because they might be in the one or the three businesses that they're currently at, and they have this big vision of multiplying, scaling. Who do I have to become to get to that next level? What are the distinctions along the way?
Yeah, so there's a few.
Okay.
And I have to tell you, it's not an easy process, to be honest. Like if you take it serious and you want to prepare for yourself to be successful and to get to the next level, it's a very uncomfortable process. And I remember when our team got probably to 30, 35, we should have created some form of an accountability system. And so we sort of didn't know that that was a thing at the time. So we got to about 55 employees, and
Mhm.
for a CEO or the leader of a business, 55 is just too many to keep track of everything that's going on, and providing oversight and support, and some things get lost in that. So that was a bit of a learning curve for me. We started researching operating systems and accountability and how to get that in to the business to support everybody, and to provide the rationale for the business to start to be successful. Like anything earlier on, I felt like I could put the entire team on my back and I could carry them across the finish line. But once
Mhm.
we got to that size, it was like, well, Bob, your ability to do that is so small now.
Mhm.
We need to make sure that everybody's supported and can do that on their own. So creating an accountability system was really big. And
Mhm.
I would say it focused on everybody in the organization getting really, really clear on what it is that their role was.
Mhm.
You may think that that's the case, but it's not until you actually sit down and go through the exercise. Everyone is really firmly aware of what their responsibilities are and the outcomes of their role are,
Okay.
what's expected of them. And then this is a key part is what those outcomes and what's expected of them, how that contributes to the success of the business.
Mm.
Because when you start getting bigger and you've got team members who are doing their job at further levels down than you are, they become disengaged in what's actually happening in the business, and they start to feel like their contributions are a little bit meaningless.
Okay.
And it's not that that's how you're leading the company, it's just that there's no connection to how what they're doing and how the company is succeeding.
Mhm.
So really starting to build that tie-in and starting to create that accountability system and sharing, here's the goals of the organization, this is how everybody contributes, and then continuing to give progress updates.
Mhm.
So communication from a high level and accountability was key first.
Okay.
The second part, I would say, was becoming the leader that I needed to become in order to understand how to manage a company that big, because nobody knows
Yeah.
what the hell we're supposed to be doing. And that was a journey all in itself, and it took about a year. And I would say I read about 50 books in a year span, all on people, culture, accountability, KPIs, critical drivers, building a successful company, the good to greats of the world,
Yeah.
what they've done, understanding and leadership, everything leadership, and really understanding the core elements of where the business was going and where the leader of that business needed to be. And
Okay.
honestly, I wasn't sure that it was going to be me, right?
Mm.
Like it was growing to the point where I was like, am I capable of this? I've never done this before. Am I supposed to be the leader? I want to be. And then I was able to start progressing. I got a coach and started to get to the point where I'm leading this business where it's going
Okay.
versus me trying to keep up with it.
So it sounded like, just from a timeline perspective, the first jump was the 30 to 35 to 50. Looking back from 50, you're like, we should have had these accountability
Yeah.
systems and ways where people sort of carry some of the responsibility or accountability versus having it be on you. Just a small question here. Was part of that process also hiring additional people to care for the accountability for, say, the 35? Was that like creating management and roles in that area too? Yeah.
Yeah, when we were somewhere, well, my 18th employee was really the first non-billable employee that was responsible for the people,
Gotcha.
right? And hiring
Yeah.
and starting to create policies and making sure that everybody was taken care of.
Okay.
And so that sort of evolved. And yeah, for sure, when we got to 30, we started bringing in operations, we started bringing in marketing,
Okay.
business development. So
Yeah.
as we got to, I would say, 80-ish people, we had this leadership team that had been created
Okay.
that didn't exist before, that's really there to support everybody on the team.
Gotcha. And then the second piece to the equation was how, and I love your commitment. In like 1 year, you read 50 books and you really committed to who you needed to become to lead this company as it was expanding.
Mhm.
So in that year of growth of a quantum leap to go from the leader of this kind of company into this massive expansion that was upon you, what were the pieces of your thought process or your identity or where you were with things that you had that no longer could serve you at this next level, like before the year began, at the end of the year? And then what were some of the pieces of your identity that you needed to express more of that they weren't as developed? So what needed to shift in this process for you to become that leader?
There were a lot. I'll start with this one though. Even this past year, so we have a strategic planning session every year with our
Mhm.
team. Although we've got a lot of people in different locations now, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging to continue doing that. But last year we had about 100 people in Peterborough, Ontario, where our head office is. And in that meeting, I talked to them about how last year was maybe the one of the more challenging years for me. The year before was my leader transformation of me personally, but last year was my transformation of who I am to the organization.
Mm,
And what I told them, and I was a little emotional sharing it because, I spent 18 years of my life becoming an expert and becoming a damn good expert in being able to have the most up to date current knowledge and expertise to support business owners. And I have since sort of hired the best of the best to surround me. And I've let them take that on because I was more needed in a leadership role versus being the go to expert. So I had to let go being the expert
mm,
and become the CEO of the company, which, may not sound to everybody listening like that's a really challenging thing, but being that expert was my go-to from an identity basis.
yeah.
So I had to let that go for the betterment of everybody else.
Mhm.
And that was really hard for me because I really enjoyed being that person, right? And I really enjoyed having that role. So that was a big one. Um, this all sort of started. I had dinner with a colleague. We were in California, and it was probably about 5 years ago. And this dinner conversation has stuck with me forever. And he, very, very successful guy, very intense guy, martial art trained, tattoos up his arms, sitting across. We're at a steakhouse restaurant, and he's holding a knife in a way that I'd be like, well, you don't eat with the knife like that. But anyway, so I'm younger, and I'm a little bit intimidated of this guy. And he sort of said, "Hey, we've got 15 minutes while we're waiting for food, our meals to show up." We were in a larger group, and he looked at me and he said, "What is it that I can share with you in 15 minutes that will possibly change your life?" And it didn't take 15, but he very quickly went into, what is it that you want to accomplish? And that goal is still there. I want to build a $100 million professional services firm. We're about a quarter of the way there, which is amazing. I can definitely see the finish line, which is really exciting. But at the time, he said, "Okay, so you want to build a $100 million professional services firm. Uh, you realize, though, that you need to become the person who can drive that business before you can drive that business there." And that stuck with me so much. And I always thought about it. And I didn't fully understand what it meant until I got in over my head when we were at about 80 people. And I didn't understand fully how to embody being the leader of a larger organization. So
Mhm.
that's what really was the trigger for me. It was like a nightmare that kept reappearing for me, him saying it over and over. You need to become the person first. You need to become the person first. And so that was really the trigger for me to start saying, okay, how do I manage teams? Right? Everybody gets promoted into a manager position and they never know how to manage people. And so not just me, but I started getting all of my managers manager training so that
Mhm.
we could better support our team. And for me, it was constantly learning about my role and where I was going as a person, how I could support our organization, our clients, better service, our culture, a better culture, how I could continue to build that, and what that meant for me helping train and empower everybody that was working with me to help us get there together. And again, it took a year of just constant reshifting, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting. And the majority of those books were on audiobooks. And it was a lot of it was during travel time, going to and from speaking events. And I took it very serious, and I'm grateful I did, because I do see now that I can be the leader of that $100 million company. I don't have the fear of getting there
Mhm.
like I did before. I
Yeah.
can see very clearly what's required of me in order for us to get there.
Yeah. And speaking of traits of that, that's really powerful. That's up my alley too, in terms of, who you have to become. I teach this 4-step training on the 4 steps of a quantum leap. And the second step is the expanded identity, is who do you have to become? And, especially speaking to entrepreneurs, small business owners, they'll go from being the practitioner, the owner of their business or service provider, to, okay, I want to multiply, I want to scale. Well, you're going to have to be a little bit more, or maybe a lot more CEO like versus owner, or, a
Yeah.
practitioner or manager in your small business. So you're going to have to get into that identity first. So I love this. I'm also curious to know the next level version of you, or even this version of you who's come quite a far way. What are the actual, like, traits and characteristics that you're like, these are the things I've had to develop or tap into more or express more of, that the version of you maybe a few years ago, maybe a year ago, was not tapped into as much, or was not developed as much in those specific traits? Give me like maybe 3 different things that you feel like you've had to get into.
For sure. The very first thing is, I would say, an approach of resilience. Um, going through the journey, anybody going through an entrepreneurial journey in any way, or anyone taking, the quantum leap, or challenging things, you need resilience, and you need to understand how you can recover from challenging circumstances. And that's probably been number one, because for sure there's been a lot of challenging things that come up now. I find some of those challenging things that were really challenging 5 years ago are like, oh, okay, that's not so bad. That's how we just feel. And it's weird that you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but it's true. For me, on the resilience side, it's finding the way that you can deal with a stressful situation, um, for you, like emotionally, mentally. You're going to have to face difficult conversations. You're going to have to face difficult decisions, things that are going to cause stress. How do you relieve that stress? And for
Mhm.
me, my wife would laugh at me when I say this, but I only need 2 minutes. I need 2 minutes. I put my headphones in, I go for a walk. I will put on some sort of motivational video. And for me, this works. It's not going to work for everybody, but something along the lines of, like, you can overcome this, continue to work hard,
Mhm.
hard, great things come after doing difficult things. And so I listen to that for 5, 10 minutes, and I come back fully energized. And I'm like, of course, this is, great things come after difficult circumstances. So that's a big one for me. Um, I would say another one, if we're thinking of sort of characteristics of people, I would say making decisive choices quickly.
Okay, that's a big
Um,
one.
yeah, I think it is, and I'm seeing that as a new challenge. We just brought on another team in a different part of Canada, and I'm working with the owners that were there, and they've been running this company for a while. And I walk in, and you can just see little challenges that the teams have been having, and some of it's around just not taking action. And so I come in and and maybe it's as you grow, your time to spend on things like this becomes a little bit less because you've got more of them. And so I feel like I know how to gather information quickly. I know how to analyze it, and I know how to make a decision quickly with
Mhm.
confidence and then support the people who are executing it. I think that's really important as you're growing. For you, you can make a decision and go and do something. But when you start not having the time to do the things and you're empowering other people to do it, you have to be able to do it quickly and supportively
Mhm.
and make sure that everyone's set up for success. So I would say that's another one. And then lastly, I would say finding a way, and this somewhat ties to resilience, but how to stay in momentum. And I know there's lots of science with cognitive behavioral theory. I believe we talked about this a
Mhm.
little bit before, but the science of momentum. And some of it for me is continuing to make sure that and not just for us, but for our team to continue to feel in momentum, having small goals and wins that can make sure that the team feels like they're accomplishing things along the journey instead of having unreasonable expectations on larger goals. Those quick wins and those smaller accomplishments keep people in momentum, and it avoids them getting burnt out. And we've as we continue to build great things, we surround ourselves with great people. We can't burn those people out along the way as well. So, maybe part of that is learning how to become a good leader while staying in momentum
Mhm.
too. Yeah.
I love that. I think everything that you described in terms of the new expanded version of yourself is more like having more of I describe it as having more of a container for things, right? So you have a bigger expanded container as an example for the problems that might come up. So the problem might come up,
Yep.
you have so much more energetic expansion that the problem doesn't seem as big, or the solutions or the resources that you have available to you in that level of leadership are going to be wildly different and perhaps resolve the problem either easier, or you have resources to kind of put the headphones on and get back into the routine and make the thing happen. I think that's and then I loved actually what you said about how you get back into the momentum for yourself, because what you're doing is put the earbuds on or the headphones on and get into the frequency or the version of yourself that can handle it. And so it takes 5 minutes to get there. You come out and you're like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm now the version that can handle it. 5 minutes ago, maybe I wasn't.
Yeah. It's so true. And it's everybody's got to find their way. I would maybe add one more thing, and I think I had to take this a little bit more seriously, especially, I'm 42 now. Not that I'm old and over the hill, but definitely not 22 anymore. And I would say, when you continue to take on more challenging things, you think about the resilience that you need to overcome challenges, investing in yourself, becoming this new version of yourself. All of this takes and requires energy. And I would say for me, about 5 years ago, I started taking physical health very seriously, with exercise, with looking at proactive health solutions to make sure that my body is constantly at the best version of itself. And yes, I have bad habits too. We all do. I like to
Not
spend
me,
time with my
never.
friends.
I don't have any bad
None.
habits.
Well, and maybe I could learn a little bit more from you, but
I'm joking. I'm kidding.
but it's amazing, making sure that you're constantly putting yourself and your body and your mind in a position to succeed, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Energy fitness is so powerful. As we get older, we need it. And I definitely, my son is 16, turning 17. We're definitely very competitive with each other. It's great. He's a great source for me to continue to push me, and I push him. And finding people who continue to want to see you be the best version of yourself as well, along with combining fitness and exercise and moving your body and nutrition and all of those good things will continue to give you the energy you need to get to the next level.
I love that. Thank you. And I loved your journey, and I love how introspective you are and how much wisdom you have about the personal parts of what you have gone through as well. I know you have tons of wisdom to share on money itself as an expert. Although I wanted to talk to the CEO version of you.
Absolutely.
But I know we'll be sending people your way on Instagram, I think, where you share a whole bunch of things that I follow that are really valuable, and I'll we'll share your links and everything else. But one thing I do want to ask you is, what are some you said you have your son and then you have another child, I think, right?
Yeah, my daughter Sophia is 14.
Okay, so you have a 14-year-old and you have a 17, 18-year-old. And what is an advice or maybe an approach that you have as a parent with your kids around money? Are you telling them to create value? Are you telling them to save? Are you telling them to, I mean, what's the money conversation in your household like?
That's a great question. I'm gonna circle around on this for a couple reasons. I feel like all of us, if we didn't have a parent who was extremely financially successful, which is very few of us, we are all sort of raised with the idea that if you don't have money, don't buy something, right? Because credit is bad, and borrowing can get us all in trouble, especially if it's in credit cards, and all very true things. If you're looking to become a business owner, we have to lose that mindset, right? We have to shake that mindset because we can't invest in ourselves and save up and invest in ourselves. It just takes too long for us to realize a certain level of success. So there becomes some time in our lives where we have to look at funding and say, this is a positive way to grow ourselves. Funding that is generating income is a good source of debt.
Yes.
Buying something that's expensive and putting it on your credit card and not having a means to repay itself, that's a bad form of debt. So with my kids, right, knowing that, yes, there's this concept of middle-class mindset, where it's just work hard, don't spend money you don't have. It's great, but it's not the best approach for the long term. So I try and find a hybrid between that to say, and it's talking about what it is that their goals are, right? What are your goals for the future? What does that look like? And right now, because you don't have an income source to fund these projects, you should be very reserved until you can find a way to start bringing in money to start supplementing how these things can happen, because you don't want to get yourself in debt issues, overspend. And maybe I'll turn this into the piece of advice that I usually give, which is very much around personal and business budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know how much money's coming in, and you need to sort of create a parameter of what goes out, right? If your goal is to start accumulating wealth, you can't spend it all, right? You need to save some to put it away. If you can save money, put it away, get that money making money so that it starts supplementing some of your other spending.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really great approach, right? So, not that I'm a huge fan of Grant Cardone, but he talks about, an example where he says, okay, if you make $100 and you spend that $100, you have nothing left, that's fine. If you start working harder or you get a raise or a promotion, don't change your lifestyle to increase that $100 spend because you're making $120. Take that $20 invest it in something that's making $2 a month. Use that $2 a month to increase your lifestyle. So you go from 100 to 102 instead of 120. And that way you keep reinvesting that surplus amount. It will build your lifestyle up over time. But what you're doing is you're taking all of those, positive movements in your life and you're reinvesting in yourself. And ultimately, the goal would be to get to a point where that investment income or that supplement amount pays you more than your job does, and you've realized financial freedom. And so everybody is capable of this. We just have to manage our lifestyles and not get consumed by what the world is telling us that we should keep spending everything we earn. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's one specific answer, but there's just, I think constant conversations about money are something that we need to have with our kids.
Yeah.
And we need to balance those conversations with what their goals are so that we can help guide them to make the right decisions.
No, I love your perspective on it. I think the way that we try to be with our children in general, whether it's with the concept of money or anything else, is based on how maybe we grew up and the things that didn't work out.
Sure.
So I grew up in the middle class, the work hard to make money and all the things.
Me
So
too.
now I try to tell my kids to create value. If you're creating value for other people, then you are going to make money. So if they want something, it's not a matter of you can't have it. You can have it if you can create the value. And they're little, so they don't understand quite, the concept of budgeting and saving and making money. But you're the expert in this, so that's why I asked.
So it's interesting. I was on breakfast television. I'm going to say it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I went on the show and we talked a little bit about this in particular, but I brought this little piggy bank that I had for my kids, and it was a dog, and it had a water dish, and you put the coins in the water dish and the dog would eat them, right? And then the coins would go into his belly, and that was your savings. So it was almost like making savings fun for the kids in a way that, this was a fun way for them to experience putting money aside and saving it for later. I definitely don't want to devalue the components of middle class mindset of hard work.
Yeah.
I said this to my friend who owns a car dealership the other day. He said, "Oh, yeah, hard work, that's a lot of hard work. I'd take the easy way." And I was like, "Yeah, take the smart way." Right? Like, we all want to do things the smart way. We don't want to overwork for things, but combine that with hard work, right? Like, if we can instill hard work with our kids and teach them the smart way to do things, the power of that combination is unstoppable. And, I feel like as a parent, I keep instilling in my kids, yes, you do need to work hard, but let's be conscious of where you're heading in your life. Learn the traits of working hard, but also learn the ways to do things the smart way, creating value for people, and then match those together. And, you'll be the 1 in 1,000, and you'll have this future that will be extremely bright. And I think that's for anybody.
I agree. I think there's a thin line between, I teach people how to do the 1 week a month lifestyle. So
Yep.
I'm the anti-hustle. However, I will say, to your point, there's a thin line between, I think, when we learn to work hard, just majority of the population goes work hard, and there's no direction, there's no strategy, there's no way to expand beyond what, say the W-2 job that you're getting. There's usually a cap on working hard, on how much profitability you can create. And I think we have taken the whole hustle thing a little bit to just consciously.
Absolutely.
Now, thin line between, yes, work hard on the things that are aligned with you, take all the actions. You wouldn't be here if you didn't work hard. You wouldn't be on your way to building this $100 million business. But also, if you had just worked hard and you didn't have the strategy that was going to be smarter, leverage employees and leverage other people and tap into all these other different ways to expand the company, the combination of those two is what works. Hard work alone, I know a lot of people who work
Absolutely.
really, really hard, and they're barely making it.
And let me completely agree with you on this, because I buy into the hustle lifestyle a little bit, but let me explain why. I think what you're teaching with the 1 week lifestyle is exactly what people need to understand, right? It's how can we accomplish the most amount in the least amount of time,
Yeah.
and also looking at life and saying there's more to life than just,
Work.
whatever that is, work, vacation. Like, everyone's got to find what is most meaningful to them. But to be able to do what you would do in 4 weeks into 1 week, that's extremely powerful. And then you have choices that you get to make from there, right? Maybe your extreme passion is doing what you do, and maybe you work 2 weeks versus one. But just think of how much you could get done. You would double what you get done because of the way that you've learned to do 1 week, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that the one coach that helped us introduce our accountability model, his main outcome was to be able to take 1 month off from work so that you could allow the team to learn without you there.
Wow.
And so not only is it good for your life to be able to learn how you become efficient and have time for other things that are maybe more important, but also to allow the other group of people to learn, take responsibility, to grow as well. So it's not just about you, it's about everybody else, and being able to empower them to succeed and grow without you, which is super powerful. So I completely agree with you. I think it's a fantastic approach to building a business and to building life.
Yeah, thank you. And I think while you, as you have transitioned into all these different roles, you must have, whether you knew it or not, have tapped into how to collapse the time. You even touched on it, like
Yep.
to be serving over 200 employees and thousands of clients. Like, you've got to be able to have this ability to collapse time. And that's really what the concept is about. So I want to be respectful of your time, and we got to wrap up. So where can people get more of your wisdom? I feel like we just started a whole nother episode. We could have gone on this hustle versus anti-hustle, and maybe we'll have you back if time allows. But how can people get in touch with you and find more about you?
Yeah, for sure. Checking us out on our Instagram, which is at gauvreaucpa, which is GAUVREAU. Any of our social handles are that. We have a podcast called The Wealthy Entrepreneur, which you were on, and a wonderful guest. So definitely check that episode out. Anybody who's listening, to hear your full story, which was great. And truthfully, website, we've got a YouTube channel on The Wealthy Entrepreneur as well. We've got videos, lots of how-to videos on how to help support your personal business finances, how to grow a business. And truthfully, we're here to empower entrepreneurs with the financial confidence to make informed decisions and change the world. And so all of our channels are supporting that. We would love to help and support you on your journey in any way that we can.
No, thank you, Robert. Thank you for giving us this time. I totally appreciate it. I think everyone should, at the very bare minimum, follow you on Instagram and send you a message and tell you how great this conversation was. Super inspiring. So I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, watching this, and tuning in from wherever you are. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into the Unreasonable Life podcast. I hope that today's episode has inspired you to dream bigger, act bolder, and step into your own version of an unreasonable dream life. If you loved what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to take their next bold leap. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram and share your biggest takeaways from today's episode. And remember, the life that you want isn't unreachable. It's just unreasonable. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Unreasonable Life podcast.